Section 1. You will hear a woman called Mrs. Reynolds being interviewed by a police officer about an incident she saw the previous evening. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Well, if you can just tell me everything you remember. It doesn't matter how trivial it seems. What may seem unimportant to you may not be unimportant to us.
OK, I'll do what I can, officer. Well, as I said, I'd just come out of the cinema on the high street, so it was about 8 o'clock, just before 8, in fact. I'd been to see a film with a friend, and she'd just gone off home. So I was just standing there wondering what to do, whether to go and have a cup of coffee somewhere or not. I was just standing there, minding my own business, when I suddenly heard someone shouting directly opposite me outside the library. Not screaming, just shouting. It sounded like the voice of an elderly woman. "They've got my bag! They've got my bag!" she was shouting. Then these two men raced past me, going like the wind, straight down the street and round the corner into West Street. It all happened so quickly, I think they must have had a car waiting for them there, because I heard one drive off at top speed. Well, I didn't know what on earth to do, whether to try and chase them, whether to ring the police, or whether to go and see if she was all right. Another woman was running up behind me, so I shouted back at her to go and call the police. Anyway, when I got to the woman, she seemed to be all right, thank goodness. A bit shaken, but OK. I think I was much more upset than she was. But all in all, she was pretty calm. I don't think I would have been, but apparently it had happened to her once before, so maybe that's why. You know, I've got a friend who refuses to go out alone anywhere after 6 o'clock now. What's this town coming to?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Well, anyway, she just kept saying, "I didn't see a thing. I didn't see a thing." One of them had just pushed her from behind, and as she put out a hand to steady herself, the other one had just taken the bag from under her arm, and then he raced off across the road. I asked her what she'd had in it, and she said she'd had her purse with about £15 in it, but no chequebook or cards or things like that, and luckily she had her front door key in her pocket. Oh, and she'd had her bus pass taken too.
Let's get back to the two men, if we can. Just tell me everything you can remember about them.
Well, there was a younger one and an older one.
Well, let's start with the younger one, shall we?
Well, age first then. He only looked about 17, not more, something like that. Neither very tall nor small. Sort of slim build. Not anybody you'd notice. Nothing particularly special about him. An ordinary-looking sort of bloke. He had curly black hair, which was quite long, but apart from that, as I say, not someone you'd notice in a crowd. Nothing really distinct about him at all. But the other one, the older one, he was different.
Different?
Yes, different. I feel as if I'd know him anywhere again. I got more of a look at him, because He ran across the road more slowly than the younger man. I remember being surprised because he was quite a bit older than the other one. I'd say about 35. Funny, because you don't think of people of that age snatching handbags in broad daylight like that, do you? He was quite a bit smaller than the other man and medium build.
What did he look like? You didn't give the officer much information last night.
Well, I did get quite a good look at his face. No beard or moustache, clean-shaven, and quite smart-looking, really. He had light brown hair cut very short, a sort of army haircut. And there was another thing. Thinking about it all last night, over and over again, I'm almost sure he had a small scar on his chin. Now, I didn't tell the other policeman that last night, but in my mind, each time I see his face, I can see one.
A scar on his chin? That could be important. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. You've been really helpful. If you really think you'd recognise him again, then what we'd like you to do later this morning, if you can, is to come down to the police station and look at a few photographs for us. See if any of those ring a bell.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.